What if you lived in a world where instead of buying a sequencer that would only ever work one way, you bought a collection of parts? And what if you could use these parts to build a sequencer? Your dream sequencer. And as your interests and experience changes, the sequencer could be changed too by design you could never outgrow. Well, it turns out you live in that world, so congratulations. Meet the DROID ecosystem from a company called Der Mann mit der Maschine. And what we're going to look at today is an off-the-shelf bundle that they are starting to do called a Moto Kit. And a Moto Kit is a collection of 5 modules sold with a pack of stickers that you can stick onto the panels and running a piece of software called the Motor Fader Performance Sequencer, which is like a whole sequencer design that we're going to mess with in this video. And what's going to be weird about this demo is the fact that I'm kind of showing you like a fully featured 4-track super sequencer with loads of really clever and interesting performance controls. Oh, and also motorized faders. And this kind of finished product, quote unquote, doesn't have to be. You can change any aspect of this sequencer, or you could gut it, take features away, and then add features in its place. It's totally and utterly malleable. And in fact, that's the whole point of the DROID ecosystem. It's a collection of various modules, which I'll show on screen. You patch functionality in this thing called the DROID Forge, which is this piece of software that lets you basically modularly interconnect and wire together functionality for your DROID system in a way that's a bit like something like Reactor, except it's a physical thing. And so it lives in the real world and you can put your hands on it. And you can use things like the motorized faders to have pages and to respond haptically. You can feel notches as you change the notes. It's really wild. You can build a DROID system to be your dream performance sequencer within the constraints of finances and the types of modules and RAM available, but it's very powerful. And today what we're going to play with is 5 modules that you can buy as a kit. You save some money by buying the kit, and you get the sequencer with it, the Motor Fader Performance Sequencer. It's like a feature-complete, well-thought-out performance sequencer, and it was designed by Matthias, who is the person behind Der Mann mit der Maschine, and Matthias plays live. He has his own live project, and he's designed the Motor Fader Performance Sequencer to use all of his abilities and knowledge of playing live, and also of the DROID system, to build his dream sequencer within these limited controls. So from a sort of high level, what I have in front of me is a 4-track sequencer. Each track can be up to 16 steps long. But even though there is just 16 steps, I can make things much longer by repeating and extending stages. Everything is tuned. There are a bunch of different scales inside this that we can choose and root notes. We can divide and multiply the speeds by odd and even amounts, so we can totally change like the pacing of all of the various channels. We can octave or semitone shift all of the channels up and down. In terms of raw data, each channel has note information, velocity information, and gate length. And we can page between steps 1 to 8 and 9 to 16 with this little button. You can copy and paste, change the start and end. And there's an arpeggiator built into each channel, which we can perform with using these dials, and also by deselecting notes in the scale with the buttons on this P2B8 module included. Now there's a bunch of other like clever performance and jumbly type things. Like for example, we can change the playback pattern, and there's like a bunch of different playback modes which will reverse, back and forward, Brownian, all kinds of different ways of playing back the track. As well as some really interesting unique things like for example, activity. Activity is a setting where we can create a kind of weighting. And then if I come over here by turning down the activity amount, then I am more or less likely to hear the notes that are lower down in terms of activity level. It's a way of excluding notes, and you determine the weighting of that exclusion. It's really clever. As well as we have probability of notes occurring, we can invert. And then we've got things like the AAA mode where it will play steps 1 to 8 3 times and then play steps 9 to 16 as a sort of B part. Lots of little things like this where Matthias has obviously just played live and thought it'd be super cool to have something that would work in this way. And then finally, you've got 3 presets we can save and recall. The whole idea is that this is built for like performance. It's designed for you to perform, improvise, come up with track ideas and jam them out and see where you go. It's really well thought out, and I hope that will come across. So let's make a track, shall we? I'll clear it and reset the whole machine back to its like factory settings. So I have the 4 tracks. I've currently got them wired up via CV, but we also have got MIDI out on this, so you could be using MIDI. So I could be controlling MIDI devices as well as CV. So let's go to track 2, which I've got the DUT for A11-6. And what I might do is set the endpoint to be just step 8. So we've just got an 8-step sequence. So to create steps, we need to be on the note page, and then we just touch the little person in front of the stage. That's it. And then if I want to change the note, I just do that. Now, what you can't feel is that because this uses motorized faders, there are detents. It is so nice. These click. I feel the notes. I can feel the joins between them, and I have to push to click it across. It's absolutely amazing. And it doesn't do that in all modes. For example, if I go to velocity, suddenly these are smooth. And now I'm controlling the velocity, which I've got wired up to filter control. You can obviously wire it to whatever you want, but filter is a particularly nice one. And then we have GL, gate length. Nice. And if we touch these at the bottom, this will create glides. Now we have these blue little menus here, which let us access track and global parameters. The little stickers along the tops and bottoms here will generally indicate what the blue buttons are actually referring to, with this last bottom one being the arpeggiator settings and the 4th button being a way of shifting pitches. Now, you might be like, oh, there's a lot of fader push in to adjust all that. Wouldn't it be nice if I could just hold a button and try my luck? Oh yes, mate. How cool is that? If you just push luck, luck will just randomly toss the coin and move the faders for you. Let's go to track 4. That's the ARP 2600 up here. And then I'll move to pages 9 to 16. Oof. Now what I can do is I can exclude notes from the scale to limit the amount of notes that are on this slider. You notice how the faders click into position, and they do that non-destructively, by the way. So if I return those notes back into the scale, they return to their original positions, but it's always up to date. It's the joy of using these little faders with motorized controls. We can, by the way, come into these menus here. This one here, range, lets us limit the range of tracks so that if, for example, you're doing luck, then it won't just be all over the shop. It constrains the range of the track. I've got the trigger right here, and I've got the 4x mutes from Happy Nerding. which is just really nice to have here. It's like a little performance front end. Coming back here. If I come to this third menu here, we get this pair of faders here. And I can use this to adjust the rate of the track, dividing it by going down, multiplying it by going up. Back to notes. Oh, actually, pattern. Pattern is the forward, backwards, Brownian, and all variations. It's nice, that, isn't it? So let's use track 3. We've got the RYK algo available. And what I'll do is I'll restrict the available notes. I'll take some notes out of the scale for that track because we've got it selected, that's what we're seeing. We can do that for every track, exclude notes. And then if I run luck, it will be constrained to within these. It's nice. So I made it 8 steps, and then what I'm going to do is use rep and pat. And what that's doing is it's making each step repeat an X amount of ticks, depending on where I have the fader. And then the pattern is one of 4 little clicks. And there are 4 different steps which have different behaviors, including repeating and extending and tying notes, which, if you're familiar with a certain sequencer, that would be the Metropolis and the M185. It's very inspired by that. Then we have activity. An activity is a setting that I determine on a per step basis. I design an activity level based on how important I think certain notes are. And then when I go onto this track menu, if I push the activity fader up, it will exclude notes depending on the height of the activity. Then if I control and touch the channel, it will mute. There's an inv button to invert a track, so which just literally inverts the notes, all temporary. And then on a kind of global level, we can octave shift the whole thing, all of the tracks at once. Or transpose them. I just turned up glide, and then I'm enabling steps to have glide using the GL menu. And the probability, by the way, is also really interesting. It's not just like the higher the fader, the more likely it is. For example, like if you move it to step 3, that note will be played every 4th turn, for example. As well, we have ratcheting. And we use this knob to control like a very cool like octave shifting up that occurs when it ratchets. And the arpeggiator is similarly bonkers. We'll play with that later. And that's really just the beginning. Onward with more jams, and we'll try out some of the other features as we go. Here's a quartet for 2 digital voices and 2 analog ones. We have the ARP 2600 up there. It's actually on top of the case. Not a plugin, I promise you. And then an algo. Using the 4X mutes here. It's a nice thing to have next to your DROID system if you don't have your DROID system during drums. Oof. That on channel 2 is the A111-6. Good time. What I've done here is I've obviously pre-prepared 4 parts, and the fun becomes how we can jam those parts, and there's a billion different ways that you can mess with them. One I really like is pattern. 1, 2, 3. Lovely. That 3-notch jump I did, that is double step forward, 1 step backward. Probably if I come in here, you can see it doing it. It jiggles through your pound. Sounds great. It just gives you a ton more mileage. Come in here and up the velocity a little bit, brighten up my 2600. And because I've got velocity up into the 2600 up there, so totally doable. Shifting, which I can do on a per track basis. It's cheeky, isn't it? Nice to have 4 whole parts to play with. A rare treat. And now a 3-note chord on the 2600. A little bit of an algo acid. I'm really enjoying the extremely robotic nature of that. I mean, I could add swing, but robot funk. How can something so robotic be so funky? Adjusted that first algo. What I could do is I could save presets of the various stages of my track and use the ABC presets to move through them. Acid. Little variation here. With good old AAA B mode on the ARP. Arpeggiating track 1 here. Fader 8 in order to make the arpeggio only sound when there is actually a gate on this channel. Here. Right, sort of Drexian techno. We'll play more of the arpeggiator later, and I'll explain it. Are you nodding? I'm nodding. Like a chicken. So all I was doing there was just changing a couple of patterns, playback patterns. So we'll be paging through these in different ways. Ooh, backwards. Here, a little duet for an RYK algo and an A11-6 with the 111-6 having a short amount of steps and using a different pattern. Just gives it that pleasing shortness. Yes. Scarcely need more than that. Have a look at the velocity patterns. The velocity pattern of the algo is all important here. It's controlling the fold amount velocity can be the velocity of anything. It's just a CV control. So here, using it to control fold, it just builds in nice timbral control. And I do mean control. You have precise control over exactly where it is. Or, I'm feeling lucky. Maybe I'm feeling lucky on the velocity of the bass line. Yeah, it's a good time. Bit of luck. Always worth trying my luck. Reduce the probabilities. I don't know if it's the name DROID or just my current mood, but I'm very much enjoying that kind of like the sort of Detroity sound of this thing. You know, sequences have a sound, right? Go to this first track, go to the track settings. Slow that right down and increase the that kind of James Stinson vibe. R.I.P. Pattern adjustment there, and of course we've got our divider. Just sort of very quickly and non-destructively gumble. Now we've got a fourth track doing absolutely sweet FA. So what could we do there? That's the Octave 600. Not a shabby instrument. Cheeky little algo in reserve. this menu here, we have like a global octave shift. But interestingly, we have a global diatonic shift. And that's a real doozy. Obviously here on the performance page, we have individual octave shifting, but on a per track basis. Whereas here, we can do the whole shebang, and that's going to be really interesting. There's a tip-top audio trigger riot behind here, which is an absolutely amazing module. I would be remiss not to point out that with a little bit of time and effort, you could build your own version of a trigger riot inside this thing. I know that Moritz, who works for the Maschine, has built his own trigger sequencer, and he did it on track 4. Because the motivated performance sequencer is like maxing out the memory, you'd have to kill a channel to add more, but that's what Moritz did. Oof. Ooh. Moritz killed track 4, so he has a 3-track sequencer, and he uses the RAM afforded by track 4 to add like a performance sequencer, percussion sequencer, which I think would be really cool to do with some additional modules from the DROID line. Maybe Moritz can comment. So behind the scenes, as I've been practicing this, I've actually only been using this thing for 2 days. There is a really good manual, like a big manual that covers all of the DROID system, and there's a whole section on the motivated performance sequencer, which is very well written, and a reference cheat sheet you can print out. It has not taken me long to learn this. Loving these little endless noodles. Let's try my luck on the velocity. Wait. Yeah. Here we're joined by the strings mode in Rings, the sort of Easter egg. A very AFX-y bass line from the algo. And a very, very beautiful ARP 2600. octave shifting. Knock that down, knock it back up, go up even higher. Shortening down the gate lengths to bring it to a close. One of the interesting things that we have here is randomization of notes as well as accumulators. I can set up, by turning up these faders, some of these detents will basically randomize the notes, and the ones at the top of the rand page create an accumulator where semitones get added onto the notes every time it rolls around. With this accumulator value, by the way, being the amount of times it plays around before resetting to 0. You hear it? That's an accumulator. Yeah, it's just one of several ways that you can basically make a 16-step or an 8-step sequence sound a lot longer. If I come into this little like dumb sequence of that depth mini voice, and then come into here, let's limit it so it's just 8 steps. So we've got a little bit of randomization. Now the colour changed because we are into the accumulators here. These two red ones are shifts down and these green ones are shifts up. So colours are used to help remind you. And so if I come in here and adjust the accumulation value, the ability to randomize notes or to add accumulators that rise and fall every time it plays around a loop. Every time it goes around, it adds a note and creates this like extra sequence that sounds longer than a 16 or an 8-step sequencer can. I've got velocity controlling the damping control on rings, so I can make this section longer. Cheeky, isn't it? The Arpeggiator is a very special beast in the Motivator Performance Sequencer because Matthias, the guy who created this whole system and this sequencer, loves arpeggiators, and it is really interesting. We turn it on by touching the Art button, and then there's a ton of controls for how we jam it. This top one becomes a constraint for how high the Arp goes. We can have it just be one note. And then this bottom one is the bass pitch. So if you just constrain it to one single note and jam this knob, you can sort of like jam like that. We can exclude notes. Or introduce them. But in the track menu, when you're in arpeggiator mode, these bottom controls control different aspects of the arpeggiator, such as butterfly mode. Here it's like taking a note from the start and end. Octave shifting. Auto reset. Shortens it. Now this is all very like on and off, but if I click this one note up and then come in here to put in some notes, and I'll use luck to do it. What's happening is it's only playing the arp when there's a gate. That was this first click here. This all seems very complicated. Know that that's how it felt to me to start with, but as soon as you like jam away with this for a day or two, you start to learn where things are. This is also detented, of course. This fader 7 drops notes from the scale, similar to this, but with just a click in a very performative way. You could do the same thing by taking notes out, but it would take a lot more clicks. There's just a fader to do that as well. Or you can do both. And that's the pattern. And that's through all of this. Effectively, this becomes a sequencer, right? It's a performative sequencer because there's so much jumbling possibilities. What is the difference between me just like drawing notes in, you know? So it's a really powerful arp. And while that's on, we can move to another channel. And I could enable another one. There's an interesting mode in here in this first menu, which is past the tuning mode. And it's called compose mode, where you can, if you have it up here, everything goes silent. However, if you turn move a fader, you hear the steps, and that helps you compose a melody without having to like listen to it play back. And that's how I composed this 4-note progression, which has a nice progression to it, but I'm actually running the track really slow, so it would take ages to feel it out by hand. If you use compose mode, you can very quickly. I can copy a track. I push the copy and then move to steps 1 to 8 and go control, paste. See what I just did there? I copied the track before I performed it, so I could paste it back. It's a way of like saving what you're about to break. Make sense? Make sense? You copy it. It back on itself. Full of little tricks, this thing. look. Change the velocity pattern on some of these elements. Octave shifting the ARP 2600. On the performance page there, you can octave shift all of them. All 4 parts. Plucking out the notes. And making a few adjustments of that soft little bass in the background. Adjust the velocity of it so it pokes out more. Knocking down the octaves on the ARP. If it's good enough for Kraftwerk, it's good enough for me. This isn't really a demonstration of any one specific aspect of this machine other than its ability to just make quite blissful jams. Use luck to change the velocity patterns, octave shift up and down, down. Keep things ticking over while you bliss out with effects and other tricks. So, in the track menu, faders 7 and 8 allow you to divide and multiply by even or odd amounts and combinations thereof by adjusting both these sliders. Plus, I have the shift fader here, which allows me to slip the sequence forward and back. So, just within these 3 controls, you have a lot of control to like nudge stuff forward and back and divide and multiply it. You can do the same thing on the bass line. And that's a bit fast, so let's use our divider again. Like that. That is a multiplication by an even amount. slow in this one sequence. I'm just being able to speed up and slow down and shift. I'm enjoying these remixes. All bedded in. Hard to tell what's what, but there it is. Very fun adjusting the velocity. As a sort of performance trick. That's pretty. Let's work with the melody. Enable and disable notes and nudge it. And then lock out the velocity. Fine tune it. Go over here. Let's increase the glide. It goes to the glide menu. Now we've got some glide. Hear it? Come to this track here. Randomize the notes. And then octave shifting. Ooh, actually a semitone shift. Yeah. Just the velocities. Let's constrain the sequence to a 3-step. Oof. By the way, I could hold control and adjust the start and end thing to change the start point. Oh, I like that. I'd like to have some sort of like Turing machine style thing to just control velocity for me, and indeed there is a thing called the Algo Quenser, which is a circuit in DROID. I can basically build that. Playing with velocity a bit more, find where I'm happy. Come to this, yeah, track 3, we'll add in a note, and then feel out the melody. Come to this page here. That's it. As I'm building a composition like this, by the way, at the very beginning, I might want to tune my oscillators. And if I come into this first menu and knock this into the center, it outputs C to all of the voices from here. So they should all be playing the same note, give or take. And then you can knock it back out. So that's a mode that you can put it in to tune your voices very briefly. Very nice feature. In the track menu, we have the ability to adjust the pattern by which the thing plays back. And this is just a good example with this two sort of bare-like sequences playing. You can really hear the differences. What's a really nice little feature is if you touch the little person at the bottom, it returns that fader to its default position. So if you've come into this like track menu, you're like, what have I done? You just run your finger along like that, and it'll just reset all of the settings. So we're back to what we had before, right? Octave shift, diatonic shift in key. Performance mode and octave shift, and then diatonic shift that. This is detented as well. I can feel the notches. It's really easy for me to knock it up 3. Like jamming those little like octaves or semitone intervals, just like doable in a way that just would not be if it was like, well, I mean, I've jammed with like pots plenty of times, but it's definitely a difference. I can feel the notch. I know that's in the center position. Up, up. Tap the bottom to return it. Nice that in it. I can perform that. All right, innit? That's good.